So this week we have a special guest who's sharing about her practice today. So if you are here, Ivy, let me know so I can add you to the feed. There you go. Ta-da. And your request, go live. All right, syncing in just a few seconds. Hang tight, y'all.
Hello.
Hi, there you are.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Happy last day of May. What is time? It just kind of flows by.
We just lose track of all time.
That's for sure. Yeah. So let's just jump right in. Can you share with our good people a little bit about yourself and the things you love, what you love focusing on, a bit about your journey?
Okay. So my name is Ivy. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist for women and couples in California. And I like to focus on anxiety and insomnia. I also focus a lot on people who were raised in toxic environments, teaching them how to break those generational cycles,
Yes, yeah.
speak up for themselves, be assertive, and just live a life that's out of the box. And I help couples move their relationship from just kind of boring and feeling like roommates to actually feeling passionate and feeling like lovers again. That's what I do.
Yeah. And so during this pandemic season, I don't even know what to call it season, this period of time and, with things kind of rolling back in your work with people, has there been one question that you've been getting asked often enough?
Yes, there are two questions actually that I get asked all the time. So one of them is, can a Black woman go to therapy? And usually people whisper when they say that. I'm Black. Can I go to therapy? Is that a thing? I'm like, yes, it's a thing. It's definitely a thing. And I get asked all the time also if it's okay for a Christian to go to therapy. People want to make sure. And I'm like, I'm a Christian. That's fine. Yes, you can see me. You can talk to me. There's nothing, in my opinion, that's unbiblical about therapy.
It's a lot of hush hush stuff, right? What do you sense that's about?
It's about the shame and about the rules and legalities and all of the upbringing stuff that says keep all your business within the church or keep all your business within the home. Don't tell anybody your problems. Or with the faith-based stuff, it is if you're having any struggles, if you're anxious, if you're depressed, if you're crying, then you're not reading your Bible, or then you don't have the Holy Spirit within you. You're clearly not going to church enough. So something's wrong with you. It's a lot of shame that I see.
The message, something's wrong with you, like you need to be better, or
yes,
all the variations of it. And in your work with folks who reach out to you, how do you help them kind of get unstuck from that shame piece? I mean, it's a good thing that they've already gotten past that enough to reach out.
Yes.
Once they come in, how do you support them?
Well, with the Christians, we simply, for those who do want that biblical-based counseling, we go into scripture. And my favorite person that I talk about is David. Well, he seems sad a lot.
Yeah.
He seems sad a lot.
Dude's got feelings.
Yes, like he was struggling a lot. There was a lot going on with him. His life was certainly not perfect, but yet we read that he was anointed by God. So then they're like, wait a minute, that's true. So then it's okay to seek out help. It's okay. And then for the intergenerational stuff I talk about, let's look at your grandma's relationship with grandpa or grandma's relationship with mom. How has that worked out for them? And how has that worked out for you? What you've been doing for the past 50 years, 40 years, 30 years, does it feel like it works well for you? And a lot of times it's like, no, even though that's the way I was raised and I'm just trying to walk the line, but it doesn't really work well for me. Well, would you be open to trying something different that possibly could work for you? And they're like, yeah, as long as you don't tell my mom. Well, guess what? legally I can't tell your mom anyway. So you get to do whatever you get to do. And as they start to try new things, they just find that they're feeling a lot lighter, a lot happier. The anxiety isn't feeling so heavy anymore. And then their families kind of just get used to their new behavior. And they're like, oh, okay, well, I guess that's how she is now.
Mm-hmm. And I kind of imagine that with a lot of these kind of entrenched patterns or ways of experiencing and responding to life, that
Yeah.
it'd be great if a lot of families responded well. It'd be like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
maybe this is how, you know, they're
Right.
just going to be going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to imagine that a lot of them don't have that experience.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so
That is true.
and so for those folks whose, let's say, families
Mm-hmm.
or communities
Right.
are not as supportive, anything that you would say to them?
Well,
Encouragement
we
or
talk about
mhm,
the depth of tradition and
mhm,
how difficult it is to break from tradition. Everybody's just trying to play this role, whether it's a church role, whether it's a cultural role, racial role, whatever it is. And I also talk to them about the importance of finding support from like-minded people. I think it's so important because sometimes your family or your church or your religious body is not your support system. Sometimes they're the ones who are doing harm to you.
mhm,
Sometimes they're the ones that trigger a lot of these difficult emotions that you're going through. So as much as I empathize with them and I help them understand that those are very, very, very common patterns, unfortunately. But then outside of that, who are the people who are adding value to your life? Who are the people who fill your cup? Who are the
mhm,
people who help you feel great? Those are the people to run to. So I don't say cut off your family or like stop going to church or anything like that, but how about building new relationships? And once they start to experience what those positive relationships look like, it really helps in the healing process. Doesn't mean that everything is going to end with a pretty bow wrapped on top of it. No,
mhm,
there's a
mhm,
lot of grief work that has to be done, but they realize that the pain of staying in that tradition sometimes is so much greater than the joy of finding this new life and finding your voice and finding new ways of being and just
mhm.
being yourself.
Yeah, yeah. Now, in in a lot of moments, there are some terms that people understand. They have a certain understanding of certain terms,
Yes.
and I think toxic relationships might be one of those terms where people kind of have an idea in their mind of what it
Yeah.
looks like, but it might actually be much more multifaceted and varied. Same
Yeah.
with anger,
Mm-hmm.
that it's not just always the ragey, explosive
Right.
types. There are so many other ways by which anger can show up for better and for worse. So, how would you describe, define toxic relationships? What does it tend to look like in the people you work with?
Well, toxic relationships feel damaging. They are relationships that feel uncomfortable and they often feel like they're being done maliciously. So, very often when clients come to see me, they say, I ask about family relationships, like how is your relationship with family members? And usually they say, fine, everything's fine. And then after a while, they say, oh my gosh, like every time I leave this person's present, I just feel exhausted. Or I can't wear that to this person's house because she's going to make a bad comment. Or I have to change who I am. Or I have to make sure I'm extra quiet when I'm in the presence of this person, or else she's going to say something negative. So it's almost like feeling like you cannot be authentic. You can't be you when you're in the presence of someone, feeling drained after you leave that person. So that's how they typically experience that. And it's sometimes not even overt. Sometimes people aren't actually saying direct things or throwing direct jabs. It might be a glance or a look or a whisper or a passive aggressive comment that they make constantly. And you just feel, people say, you feel like you're drowning when you're around them. You're drowning and nobody around you can see that you're drowning. Or sometimes it feels like you're drowning and they are the ones who actually pushed you to the deep end and they're just standing there, arms crossed, just like, oh, well, let's see if she can get herself out of this. So
Hmm.
that's how toxicity often feels.
Yeah. And are there instances where someone's in toxic relationships and they don't know?
All the time. I see that all the time where, because we think that you cannot love someone who feels toxic to you. We think, because when we think of toxic, we think of the person that is, I don't know, trying to mug you down the street. It's not always that way. Sometimes it's the very people that we love. It could be spouses, it could be best friends, it could be family members, it could be people in your religious organization, it could be coworkers and bosses that you respect, or colleagues, business partners. Anyone around us can exhibit toxic behavior. So I often will say, go by that feeling that you get. If you can't hold your head up high, and if you feel exhausted after you're with that person, if you feel like you have to put up a show or put up an act when you have to be with that person, then something's off with that behavior. And I always say, don't tell people that they're toxic. Like, don't walk up to your mother and say, "Dear mom, you're toxic." It's not going to go well.
No. They'd be like, "No, you toxic." Like it's gonna,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So one of the things I'm hearing is that one sign of whether you're in a toxic relationship is like how you feel when you're
Yes.
it's anticipating meeting with a person, or how you
Mhm.
feel, let's say, during or afterwards.
Yes.
Um, are there people who feel numb?
Absolutely. Some people feel nothing
Hmm.
when they're with toxic people. And sometimes you find that there's a lot of jealousy and competition in toxic relationships.
Hmm.
So there sometimes will not be this spirit of cooperation that we all know and love. Or well, we don't all know it, but we all want to be able to have that support around us. But in toxic relationships, it's almost like somebody has to be in charge. There's this dynamic of power and control sometimes where
Hmm.
somebody always has to get the last word in. It's difficult to agree to disagree. It's like, no, you're wrong and I'm right, and that's it. But are you open to new? No, I'm not open. You're wrong and I'm right, and that's just the way it's going to be. Or you hear this thing about tradition. This is the way it's always been. But
Hmm.
you're like, but that's hurting me. No, 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 it can't be hurting you, and your feelings aren't real. It's not my fault that you're sad. You're sad because something's clearly wrong with you and you're too sensitive. So if you
Hmm.
learn to stop being sensitive, you won't be sad when I make these aggressive comments to you.
Hmm. So I'm hearing that one sign of someone who might be toxic is that they're so rigid
Rigid.
and one-sided, not
Mm-hmm.
open to hearing the other
Mm-hmm.
person's experiences, let alone
Yes.
validating them.
Mm-hmm.
Controlling, telling the other person what to
Yes.
do. The other person doesn't have a say. Their experiences don't matter. Their
Right.
emotions don't matter. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what does someone do when they find out that they've been doing those things? Because that's what they know.
Yes, that's what they know. Sometimes that's how we're raised and that's what we see around us and that's just what we do. Well, I talk about, okay, then let's do the opposite of that. And it's not easy because
Mm-hmm.
if you're used to that pattern and that dynamic of being cutthroat and cutting people down and jealousy and all of those like difficult behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
then I say, okay, take a moment to pause. Take a moment to pause and think, how would you feel if that was done to you? Because the interesting thing is, even if you exhibit toxic behaviors, you don't enjoy it when that behavior is done back to you. You're not like feeling warm and fuzzy
Mm-hmm.
when someone has that aggressive interaction with you. Even though that's all you know, it doesn't feel great on the inside. So take a moment and pause. How would you feel if that was said back to you? I'd be upset and I'd attack them back. Well, okay. If your
Yeah.
behavior triggers that type of big emotion in you, then maybe let's think of another way to talk about that. So we do a lot of practice and
Mm-hmm.
in assertive communication as opposed to aggressive communication. Um, we also talk about making amends because I think that is important. I think it's very important. And but I'm not necessarily talking about like in the AA way, but it's just about it's okay to take responsibility for your behavior. It's okay to go back and apologize and say, I've noticed that I've been damaging to you. I've been toxic to you. I've been hurtful to you. I've noticed that you have felt uncomfortable in my presence, and I am sorry. So we also talk about that. I statements. Not because you're so sensitive, that is why I was so damaging to you. No. We can't do that. So how to really talk and how to really communicate with people and how to attune with other people's emotions. We learn all of those things.
So some signs of someone who is not toxic and who is safe and quality are those who are able to consider another person's experiences, consider their own impact on the other person, being able to even articulate their own experiences, the I statements. And I think this is a pretty significant one, taking responsibility for their own stuff. The world would be so different if more of us knew how to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We don't have to be perfect. So safe does not equal perfect. Nobody is perfect. We make mistakes. Mistakes are quite okay. I find that when people are raised in toxic environments, it goes hand in hand with that perfectionism, because if you're anything short of perfect, you will be verbally attacked or shunned, or something will just happen to you that just won't feel good. So there's this thing of I need to be perfect because I don't want anybody to say anything negative about me. I don't want to be the butt of anybody's jokes. I don't want anybody to make fun of me or look down on me. So I'll do everything perfectly. So then it's about learning that imperfections are just a part of the human experience. Some things you'll do great, some things you won't do so great, and sometimes that's okay.
So like perfectionism can be a way that a person is trying to take care of themselves, but it usually doesn't lead to that outcome. Now, you and I can talk about toxic relationships all day, because it's also my jam too. Like I love talking about relationships and emotions and all of that. But I know that you also focus on some other areas as well, mentioning insomnia, and supporting couples in cultivating their relationships. So could you share a bit more about each of those?
Yes. So with insomnia, I do CBT for insomnia. It's cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And the idea behind it is the way you think about sleep can greatly affect your sleep. So a lot of people who struggle with sleep have a lot of anxiety behind their sleep, and they think a lot of anxious thoughts, and all day long they'll say, oh my goodness, I wonder if I'm going to sleep, or it's negative. I know I'm not going to sleep tonight. They lay in bed, or even sometimes before laying in bed, they walk into the room and the first thought is, I know I'm going to be tired tomorrow. They're already thinking future focused negative thoughts about sleep. And what that does, it stirs up anxiety. And most of us cannot sleep when our body's under that type of stress. Or you're laying in bed and you're willing yourself to sleep. If I close my eyes really tight, then I will force my body to shut down. And so these unconscious thoughts and behaviors, unbeknownst to us, are increasing insomnia. So then with CBT for insomnia, I teach clients how to create a great sleep environment, how to change behaviors so that they can support sleep, and also how to work on those unconscious automatic thoughts so that we can start to think positive sleep promoting thoughts.
I should probably done this live with you a couple of days ago, because I could have benefited from this last night. I'm like, looking at the clock, I'm like, okay, now I have like 5 hours, now 4 hours.
Right.
Yeah.
Stress. That just takes your stress all the way up.
It's like trying harder to sleep makes it worse.
Yes, it does.
And I know that you have a useful resource that you've put together. Can you share a little bit about that?
So I have a free download, and it's just 5 myths that are basically keeping you awake and how you can finally sleep. That's basically what it is. So 5 myths that most people with insomnia believe are like the golden truths about sleep. So those are typically keeping us awake. And basically, and then I answer, okay, let's debunk this myth, and here's how you can finally sleep.
Yeah. I'll add the link in the show notes on the bottom afterwards. And then with your couples,
Yes.
what's been fun about working with them? What's been coming up?
Oh, couples. I enjoy working with couples because when they come to me, it's like, oh my goodness, we're not communicating. We are arguing all the time, but we want this to work. Or sometimes one person is like, I don't really know, I'm on the fence. And the other person is like, yes, I want this to work. And it's really about teaching them how to respect one another,
Mm-hmm.
how to find friendship again, and how to communicate. I think that is key. How to communicate with one another, how to respect your partner, how to see your partner, and how to love your partner the way your partner wants to be loved, not the way you think that they need to be loved. I think a lot of couples get into trouble with that one.
Well, because, obviously, like you and I are the same person, so I should love you the way that.
Of course.
Not. Yeah. So, what is like an exercise that you might do with a couple who's coming in having trouble um, loving the other person well?
I'm always pointing them to the 5 love languages. We talk about the 5 love languages. They do the quiz on the 5 love languages together so that they can understand what each love language is. And then in session, we'll talk about the results of the quiz. And then we have the each partner explain what are examples of things that fill your cup. What are some things, first of all, what are some things that your partner does that you truly enjoy? So we're always playing to their strengths. It's not about you don't know your partner and you've dropped the ball. No, yeah. It's very strengths based. What are some things that your partner is already doing that just excite you and make you feel loved and seen? We talk about that. Okay, do more of that. And what are some other things that your partner can do? We talk about that. And then we go to the other partner. So now that you're hearing their perspective, what are 2 things? And we just do it very slowly. What are 2 things that you think you can do that will make your partner really happy and make them feel loved? And then they talk about that. Now that's your homework. Just put time on the calendar. And again, partners are typically busy and cannot find time. So then we sit and I say, bring out your phones. Let's pull up the calendar and let's put it on the calendar. This is couples time. We also set rules. I don't set the rules for them. They set the rules for themselves. What are some rules? How long do you want this couples quality time or couples meeting, couples time? They call it whatever they want, love time, whatever they want to call it. How long do you want it to be? And what are the rules we're going to set? Some couples will say, no phones. Some will say no text. Some will say no social media. Some will say you have to sit with me. Some will say you have to cuddle with me. You have to hold my hand. Okay, good. Is everybody in agreement? So I'm also teaching them how to speak up for themselves, how to communicate. And then it's always about validation. We talk about how to validate each other, even when you don't agree with one another. I also normalize that arguments are going to happen. Disagreements are going to happen. Because you're a couple doesn't mean that you have to be of one mind and think and love all of the same things. You're not going to love all of the same things.
Yeah.
But everything doesn't have to become an argument. If one person says, I love blue, and the other person says, I love red, it's fine. Okay. I could see how you could love red. I happen to love blue. That's great. Wonderful. Doesn't have to be an argument.
Yeah. Can you go over like the quick overview of what each of the 5 love languages are? In case our listeners are new to it.
So quality time is one of the 5 love languages, and it's basically spending time with your partner, but in a way where your partner is attuned with you. So people whose love language is quality time, they like people to spend time with them where you're actually looking at them, you're chatting with them, you're listening to them. And that's the way that they also tend to love on other people. The next one is acts of service. So doing things for your partner. And I do have to say that love languages aren't just for people that are coupled up. Love languages can be for kids. It can be for your coworkers, friends, loved ones. All humans have love languages, which is the way that they like to be loved. So acts of service could be, you made my bed for me, or you brought a meal to me, or you cleaned off the kitchen counter for me. Doing things for them. You fixed my bike. Yay, I'm so excited about that. So doing things for the person. They don't have to be huge tasks. It could just be something simple like I loaded the dishwasher today. Perfect. And then there's physical touch. And that would be people who are huggers and people who love to kiss and they love to hold hands and things that just feel physical. And you can tell kids who have physical touch as their love language. They're the ones who will come and they'll like give you a hug. And some people, when they talk, they're like touchers. They'll like touch your arm lightly or like they'll tap you. And then you're like, okay, that's physical touch. And then we also have gifts. And when we think of gifts, typically, sometimes when I have the couple do the quiz and one of them gets gifts and the other person is like, oh my gosh, this is about to get very expensive.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't even have to be anything that you buy, but it's just the thought behind it, knowing that your partner or your loved one has spent time crafting something for you. It could even be like you mix them a drink and then because you created it with your hands and then you give it to them. And then now my mind is drawing a blank. What's the last one again?
Words.
Words of affirmation. There you go. Words of affirmation. People who want to hear that you love them and they want to hear that they're doing a great job. They want to hear that you're proud of them. So you're saying by your words, you're affirming them, you're loving them, you're validating their emotions with your words. And typically I find that couples will have a little bit of different love languages. So one could be acts of service and one could have quality time. And that's why it sometimes will feel like my love tank is empty and I don't feel like I'm loved. Or sometimes they'll say, you don't love me, you don't appreciate me. Because typically we love people, we show our love in our own love language. So then once we learn how to speak our partner's love language, then they feel like they're seen and they're loved.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So it's a way of tuning into the other person for who they actually are, not what we think
Yes.
they are or how we think they should be.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so it leads to an acknowledgement and accepting the other person.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And one love language is not better than the other. It doesn't really matter what love language you have. They're all equal and they're all wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Now, I've kind of noticed that, especially during the pandemic, for parents, let's say, uh, time is not readily available.
No, it's not.
So sometimes I'm guessing that the love language, the primary love language may kind of
Mhm.
shift or change
Yes.
based on what is going on
Yes.
for the couple.
Mhm.
So when it comes to the process of therapy, kind of shifting directions again.
Yes.
Yeah. What are some myths or misconceptions about therapy that you've heard?
That therapy is judgmental and your therapist will tell you what to do and your therapist will shame you and judge you. I've heard that therapy is exactly like talking to a friend. So what's the point? Because they're just going to smile and nod all day and not teach you anything. That's another one I've heard. I've also heard that if you go to a therapist, then they will give you medication and now you'll be on medication for the rest of your life and your life is just going to be over. Or therapists just want to stick you with this very severe diagnosis. And again, it always leads to, and then your life will be over. So those are some of the misconceptions that I hear. Or they'll say something like, therapists, because of, I think a lot of times how, the TV portrays therapists,
Terrible.
I'm like, that is not who we are at all. People are like, you laugh a lot. I didn't expect that therapists could
Mm-hmm.
laugh. Well, I laugh and I laugh a lot. So, yeah. Or I didn't expect you to be this nice. Well, I'm not going to be mean to my clients. That's definitely not something that I do. Or the idea that if you see a therapist, then the therapist will tell everyone your business and it might be posted on social media. Like, no, there's confidentiality. I will not be posting anything about you on social media ever.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's like, when there are TV shows about like the medical profession, and like when medical professionals actually watch those TV shows, it's like, this is not the real thing. This is not how it actually works. I think a lot of it, it's also the same about therapy as well. It's like the portrayals of it is like, what? They're like breaking all the rules. Like,
they're going with their clients for drinks after work. I'm like, what?
nope,
We don't do that.
nope. Or like, using clients' information to like leverage against them. It's like, what?
No.
It makes for
No.
addictive TV shows, but it's not real
It
life.
does. No, it's not real life at all.
Yeah. So you've shared about what therapy isn't.
Yes.
What would you say therapy is?
So I would say that therapy is a process of getting you to where you want to be. So, and the reason why I'm keeping it so vague is because we don't tell you where you need to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, the way I work is I tell you what would you want your life to look like in 6 months or in 3 months or in 1 year? And they tell me, and then we just walk towards that. And then we talk about what would you want your social relationships to look like? What would you want to feel when you wake up in the morning? We talk about career. What would you want that to look like? What do you feel is standing in your way? Oh, it's this thing. Okay, let's work towards that. It's a process of really getting to know yourself. It's a process of getting to heal some of those difficult emotions that sometimes keep us stuck, or maybe that keep us afraid, keep us stagnant. And it's a process of learning how to create relationships with yourself and people around you so that you can actually thrive. So that's how I would describe. And I know it's sort of nebulous the way I'm describing it, but that's the best description I could come up with.
I mean, there's such diversity in individuals anyways. Like, everyone's
Yes.
desires and goals are different. So it's,
Yes.
there's no way um, to pigeonhole people into like one
Mm-hmm.
way of growing or healing. Like
Exactly.
for one person, their work is to learn how to do anger less or to find better
Yes.
ways of doing anger. And for another
Yes.
person is to do anger more. And both of them
Yes.
might actually be really healing for them in their relationships. So,
Exactly.
mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you mentioned the resource for insomnia, about the
Yes.
5 myths around it,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there's another resource that you have available for people. I think it's the support group. Can you share a bit
Yes.
about that?
Yes. So currently I am enrolling for the Women of Color online support group. And it all started because, when the pandemic hit, I kept hearing from women of color, I just feel alone. I feel like there's so much going on and I have nobody to talk to. But they weren't just talking about seeing a therapist. They were talking about wanting a community of women that understand what they're going through. So it's a place where they don't have to be so perfect and they don't have to be the caretaker all the time. You get to just sit, you get to connect with other women of color who understand some of the struggles that you're going through, who get to support you through it. And we tackle topics, we talk about race and racism and how to maneuver that. Of course, we're not going to solve racism in 8 weeks, but we talk about how do you maneuver that so it doesn't feel like something that's strangling you all the time. We talk about ways to take care of yourself. What can
Mm-hmm.
self-care look like? And we talk about ways to build self-esteem and self-confidence and how to ask for help. Because majority of the women that I talk to do not ask for help ever. It's an 8-week group. We meet once a week for eight weeks, and you just leave feeling like some of the burdens have been taken off your shoulder. And of course, that's why the group is called Lay Down Your Burdens.
It's a phenomenal name. And so, how many spots are left right now?
I
Amazing.
have 2 spots left.
Okay.
Just 2.
All right, so y'all, hurry up and sign up, and I will drop all the links for the insomnia resource and the support group resource in the show comments. And any other words about like how people can find you? What are the cool things you're doing? And one thing you like to do for fun?
What I like to do for fun, I'm a foodie. I'm like, what can I eat today that's different? Or sometimes I cook and I'm like, okay, what can I cook today? And I just love to look for recipes. And I'm like, I've never tried that before. Let me try this. And that's what I do for fun. I also take naps, which is why I'm obsessed
Oh,
with
yes.
sleep, because naps are life. And to find me, you can find me on my website at thezinniapractice.com. And I'm also on Facebook and Instagram at the Zinnia Practice as well.
Yeah, so Ivy, thank you so much for being here today. And I'm super excited about all the things that you're doing to support people and getting to love themselves better and also each
Yes.
other. So maybe we'll do this again next time.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, Joanne. This was so much fun.
Yeah, all right. Until next time. Peace out, y'all.
All right. Bye.